I want to talk to you today about something that's going to ruin your summer. Not might ruin it, going to. Because here's the thing. Most guys watching this right now have a classic car sitting in their garage and they're getting ready to take it out for the season. And the coolant system in that car probably hasn't been looked at in years, maybe longer, and they don't know it's a problem until they're sitting on the side of the road and the hood up and the steam's coming out from underneath it. And the frustrating part, this is all preventable. Almost always, it's not that complicated. It's stuff that most guys just ignore because it's, well, not exciting. Nobody makes YouTube videos about their coolant system working great. But a lot of guys are making it to a car show in late August wondering why their temperature gauge is creeping up as they go along. That's what we're going to be talking about today. Let's get into it. The first thing I want to hit is something that is going to surprise you. It's the thermostat. Now, the thermostat is like a $10 to a $15 part. It sits inside a housing on the front of the engine, on all Chrysler engines, and it's not visible. And most guys, including myself, don't think about this till something goes wrong, and that's a mistake. Here's what a thermostat does. When you first start your engine, the engine is cold, and the coolant just actually circulates inside the engine block until it gets up to operating temperature. When you hit that temperature threshold, whatever the thermostat is set at, the thermostat opens, and now the coolant starts flowing through the radiator, and then the radiator is like a heat sink, and it pulls the heat out. It's that simple. Now, for MoPar specifically, like the LA and the BRB engines, my MoPar, for the most part, started running 195 thermostats in them. And so they run a little bit on the warmer side, but there's a reason for this, and the factory knew it. See, if you run a 195 thermostat, here's the thing. Your engine is now going to be actively cycling coolant. So when the 195 opens, it rushes all that coolant into your radiator. The radiator takes out the temperature from the coolant, and then it gets it below 195. Thermostat shuts, runs it again, brings it back, drops it down. You actively have it working. It's always moving. Now, what causes runaway heating is the thermostat either sticks shut or your system can't keep up. Or the thermostat's wide open and it has no ability to slow the coolant down. And the 195 gives you that active cycling that keeps the engine from ever getting ahead of itself. This is a $10 to $15 part. Do it this weekend. I know it's a pain, but do it this weekend. And while you're in there, replace that housing gasket. You can't reuse these on MoPars. We're talking about, $1 worth of gasket. It's 5-10 minutes. Hopefully it doesn't leak. Chryslers are notorious. But this could save you a blown head gasket. Okay, the water pump. The water pump is actually what moves coolant through the whole cooling system. And here's what a lot of people get caught, including myself. They only replace the water pump when it starts, leaking out the weep hole. And that's it. That's the only time it ever gets touched. But an old water pump that isn't leaking still can be failing in a way that you don't know. Now, the inside, the thing moves water around, it's called an impeller. These things can corrode over time, especially a cast iron impeller in an aluminum housing, different metals, or they can loosen on the shaft, on not spin as fast as the actual water pump pulleys moving. But, it all looks fine, but nothing's moving on the inside. So here's the deal. If the water pump has been on the car for a long time and you're unsure of its condition, 5-10 years, where it starts getting a little sketchy, replace it, because it's better to be a little cautious on the front end than to actually be, caught out on the side of the road with an overheating engine. And here's a tip that a lot of MoPar guys don't know. When you're replacing that water pump, go for an AC unit. Now, even if your car doesn't have AC, get that AC pump. The AC pump actually has less impellers on it. And this is the thing. The less impellers on it actually move the water slower through the system, which is what you want. It moves more volume because they're bigger, but it also moves it slower. And slower is better in this point because the slower it moves through the radiator, the more that it could actually dispense the heat in your radiator. So a stock 2-core radiator is absolutely sufficient if the fluid stays in the radiator long enough to dispense its heat. It's one of those things that feels absolutely backwards until you really think about it. The guys who've been building MoPars for years know this trick. Now you do too. The radiator, let's talk about this. A lot of these old radiators are original equipment, like the one in my car, or close to it. And a stock radiator on a muscle car was designed with a certain amount of cooling capacity for a stock engine in certain operating conditions. If anything has changed, different engine, performance modifications, lots more stop and go traffic, and you live someplace that's 95 degrees like I do, a stock radiator may not be enough. But before you run out and get a new radiator, let's make sure the one you have is actually doing the job. First, the fins. This is the face of the radiators, that prickly thing on the outside. The fins should be straight and open. If they're bent or matted together, airflow is completely restricted. A fin comb is cheap. You can buy them on Amazon. Straighten them out. This is a free cooling capacity that you're leaving on the table. Second, blockage. If debris is packed in the core, bugs, road dirt, whatever, a garden hose from the backside, low pressure, please don't use a pressure washer on this. Flush it out, because if you use a pressure washer, you can bend the fins. Not good. Third, the hoses. Squeeze them. Both the upper and lower hoses, they should be firm and pliable, not rock hard and not soft and spongy. Hard means they're about to crack. Soft and spongy means they're collapsing under suction. Good stuff. And a collapsing lower hose is one of the sneakiest overheating causes out there because everything looks normal until the pump can't draw any coolant. Modern hoses don't need the spring on the inside, but you can always add that spring on the inside as extra protection. And check the hose clamps. Now, I mean, if you have the ugly worm clamps, that's fine. I mean, they hold well. The spring clamps like I have on my car, they're great, but check them every year because their spring clamps do lose their tension, and they're actually really cheap to buy a set, and just replace them, every year or two to make sure that you don't have a leak. Coolant. This is a simple one, and this gets ignored constantly. When was the last time you drained and refilled your entire cooling system? If you don't know, do it. When old coolant breaks down, the corrosion inhibitors degrade. It becomes acidic. And that old degraded coolant begins eating the inside of your engine block, your radiator, and the water pump. Now, a 50-50 mix or even a 60-40 coolant to water is preferred. Use antifreeze, distilled water, even reverse osmosis water. Never use tap water. Distilled reverse osmosis. Tap water has minerals, and it will deposit inside your cooling system over time. And especially if you have a water softener, there's salt in there. So you really don't want to have that happen inside your cooling system. Now, here's the one that I have really picked up over time, and it's a phosphorus-free antifreeze. This has been used in modern cars that have aluminum parts to them. A lot of you guys just grab whatever coolant is on the shelf, and it's usually the conventional green stuff, and that's been a go-to for decades. But, if you have an aluminum water pump, aluminum heads, or anything that's inside that block that's aluminum, the phosphorus inside the older coolant will actually react with that aluminum, and it will corrode and destroy it over time, even if it's still good. The phosphorus-free protects aluminum and soft metals in your engine. It's not hard to find. It's not more expensive. And I'm going to show it right. I'm showing it right here. This is what it looks like on the shelf. And there are many different name brands. Just check the label. It usually says it on the front. And also, check that cap. Make sure that, on a MoPar, most caps are 15 to 16 pounds. A cap that isn't holding pressure means that the coolant has a lower boiling point because pressure raises the boiling point. And it will actually cause you to have a problem earlier than if you have a good cap on the car. Now, finding you can use an aftermarket cap. They're not very hard to find. They're not very expensive. And that is really not a reason to skip it. Now, the last one, and this is the most overlooked on the entire list, the fan and the shroud. A stock mechanical fan on a classic car moves a lot of air. Now, but it only moves that air efficiently when it has a shroud, directing that air through the radiator. Without the shroud, a significant portion of that fan's airflow is just churning around the engine, and instead of pulling it through the center of that radiator. I know it looks like just a big piece of plastic, and it seems like it's in the way, but the shroud forces the air through the core instead of around it. And a lot of these cars have lost their shrouds or they've gotten damaged over the years. And guys that are not running this do not realize how much cooling capacity they have lost. If your shroud is missing, go find one. They're available out there. Check salvage yards, which I doubt you'll find, but go to swap meets, call MoPar vendors, even on Facebook Marketplace. It's worth finding a cracked and warped one, seal or replace it. This is a cheap fix for a real problem. And when you're looking at the fan, there's two things. Count the blades and the pitch. So, sometimes people put like smaller fans over the years, and the worst ones are flex fans because they actually can rip the center out of the water pump. Get rid of that immediately. Now, there's two types of fans, though. There's a solid fan like I have where it just constantly is attached to the pulley, and then there's one with a clutch. Now, the clutch fans, make sure that clutch is working. When the car's up to temperature, take a roll piece of paper and put it into the fan. The fan should not stop when the car's up to temperature. It should keep going. If it stops, the clutch is bad. This is a cheap check to make sure that that fan is actually working when you need it. Now, some of you aren't watching this because you're getting ready to do prep work. You're watching this because, well, you already have that little creep of temperature on your gauge. You're getting kind of nervous every time you bring the car out. This is how I approach it when I diagnose it. First, I always figure out, is it a slow creep or a fast creep? Slow creep that stabilizes above normal is often the coolant, thermostat, or a partially blocked radiator. Fast spike that climbs quickly usually points to a water pump or a stuck thermostat. Second, now, does it happen at low speeds or in traffic? That's an airflow problem, which is, fan, shroud, radiator fins. And at highway speed, you have ram air coming through there, so that's really not doing anything. So there, you're kind of looking at timing, or is the fan, making the air oscillate and not coming through the fan at speed, coming through the radiator at speed, because there is that, it can make it buffer. Third, and this is a big one, this should not catch you by surprise, coolant loss. Now, you're looking for any time when the car's running, you're looking for, like, if you see bubbles in your coolant, if you see white smoke, if you have a very sweet smell from that exhaust, that's usually like a head gasket problem. That's a totally different conversation, and that can be really bad or not so bad. If you're seeing any of this, please don't drive the car. Try to fix it before you do any type of real driving with it, because this is not a cooling system problem anymore. This becomes a serious engine problem. Now, for most guys watching this, one of the first 5 things I talked about, run the checklist. Start cheap with the thermostat, coolant, hoses, then move up to the water pump, radiator if needed, or just have it, rotted. Try to fix the one you have first. Don't spend hundreds of dollars on a new radiator before you replace the, $10 to $15 friggin' thermostat. Let's bring this all together now. The 5 things. If you're going to do these 5 things for summer, you're going to be in pretty good shape. 1, replace the thermostat. A 195 unit, you could do 180 if you live in a much cooler area like up north, but you want the engine to be actively cooling. You don't want it to go run away. You don't want the thermostat to just be open and stay open. You want it to actively try to cool the car, and it's like $10 or $15 and it's done. 2, the water pump. Now, if it's been in there a really long time and it hasn't been very, your cooling system hasn't been well maintained, replace it. And if you're on a MoPar or any car, get an AC style water pump. They are on sale. O'Reilly has them. Here's the picture again. Buy this. This is for an LA. They make them also for a B&RB. Slower speed gives it more efficiency. And the guys who know. Radiator inspection. Check those fins, the hoses, straighten, flush, replace. This is free maintenance, gets skipped constantly. 4, check your coolant. Minimum 50-50. You want it, you really want it to be up above 260, 262 on the hot side, negative 20 on the cold side. You use distilled or reverse osmosis water, phosphate-free antifreeze. Check that pressure cap. If you're not sure if any of this was last done, drain it and refill it. Or you can test it, and I'll show here how to test it with a voltmeter. Check your 5. Check your fan and shroud. A proper fan, a plastic fan shroud in place, and sealed to the radiator. This one is free to check and close to free to fix if something is, amiss. None of this is complicated. None of it is expensive. This is stuff that guys have been doing for 30 to 40 years automatically. Now you know it too. Look, no one likes breaking down on the side of a road with a hot engine, especially on a summer cruise where everyone else is having fun, but the guys who avoid it aren't lucky they actually did maintenance. Now you run that checklist. Take a Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon. You'll be glad you did it the first time that temperature gauge stays exactly where it should be on a 90-degree day. If you got a buddy with a classic car that's getting ready to take it out for the summer, share this video with him. This is exactly the kind of thing that's worth knowing before you take your car out. Drop it in your comments below. I generally want to know, what's your cooling setup? Are you running a stock radiator? Did you go aluminum? What are you running, and how have you been what's been in your experience? Just let me know in the comments below. And remember, take that car out, because when you take it out, you'll make someone's day. It'll probably be your own. Oh yeah. And I'll catch you on the next one.